I'm a divorce lawyer, and by the time people get to my office, it's mostly because of either one really big fight or a fight that's been going on for years and years, the same fight over and over and over. So I want to tell you about the most common fight that I hear about and a couple of ways to think about it. And I hope this might help you avoid having to ever get into my office or a divorce lawyer's office at all. So the fight that I see the most is the list fight. It's also been labeled the mental load, like who's carrying the mental load. So this is a fight between two people where one person's like, I see that you're overwhelmed and you're really mad at me today about not doing things around the house or these important errands. Can you just make me a list and tell me what you need me to do so that you can be happy? And the other person in the same argument is saying like, you idiot, I don't have to make you a list. Why can't you make your own list? Do you want me to put your socks on for you too? So you've got two people who are equally frustrated for different reasons and they're like speaking a different language. So I'm going to address this argument from each person's perspective so that if this is a fight that's going on in your household, you can at least come at it from a more aware perspective. You could see the other person's side a little bit more. So for the person who's asking for a list to be made in order to figure out what needs to be done, it's okay that you aren't aware of the fact that this is actually a really bad thing and it's triggering for most, let's call it women. So number one, I get that it would be easier for you to have a list of the things you need to do in order for everyone to be happy. But that whole thinking is a part of the problem. It doesn't mean that you're not helpful and it doesn't mean that you aren't aware of what's going on. It just means that there's a whole world beyond your request for a list and a whole set of tasks that go into figuring out what needs to happen in order to make a list. So if you want a list, and that would really help you, the thing you need to do in this argument is to make your own list. Now, this is going to be hard at first, and this is where you're going to ask a bunch of questions of your partner who's typically making you the list. But your job is to make a list of what you think needs to happen. And when you put yourself in the shoes of the person who typically makes the list, you'll start seeing how hard it is to actually make a list. So when you can divide the labor of not only what needs to be done, but like figuring out what needs to be done, then you're on your first steps towards resolution with your spouse who's probably a little bit cranky, tired, and overwhelmed. For the other side of that argument, if you're the person who's getting these constant requests for lists, now's your time to, instead of yelling or getting upset, communicate. This is where you start telling everybody what it takes to make the list. When I'm asked for a list in my home, my response is, well, what do you think needs to be done? And when that person starts discussing what they think needs to be done, you can offer helpful tips and advice, but they're going to create the list. It doesn't help anybody if you're upset about doing something for someone. You either need to refuse to do it and explain why, but offer some help, or you need to just get on with it and not be resentful for making the list. The problem is that you're continuing to make the list and you're continuing to be upset about it. Resentment is the number one reason why people show up in the divorce lawyer's office. So if you're tired of making a list, then stop. But you are going to have to answer some questions about all that it takes to make the list because you're the person that knows that. When you bring everybody into a family meeting, or if you have a meeting about what it takes to make a list, you're starting to give people information on what they need to be thinking about to make the list in the future. If you want to delegate this task, and you do need to, because these people don't know all that goes into making the list, you need to bring them into the fray on your thinking about that list. And the only way to do that is to communicate. If you can communicate this without sarcasm or resentment, two traits that I have a hard time with, then you're on your way to a successful conversation where you bring your family members and your partner into all that it takes to run your house or to run your lives or to even run your business. It doesn't mean that you guys are in trouble if you're having this type of fight. It means that you need to put yourself in the other person's shoes and try to move forward without resentment. Hope this helps.